This
Somersault for the touchdown
is cool. And this is also cool. So why doesn't anybody think that this is cool? Or that this is cool? Or that any of the clips that I'm showing you are even cool in the slightest? Well, that's because nobody cares about cheerleading. This is a statement that will be bothersome to many, but somewhat relatable to most. If you are a cheerleader, or at least are close to someone who is, you know how competitive, difficult, and both emotionally and mentally taxing it can be. It's so intricate with many different divisions, levels, skills, and subsections, so it might come off as offensive when I say that nobody cares about it. I am using hyperbole when I say nobody cares about cheerleading because it's true, some people do. But why does it feel like nobody really cares? Why are there still arguments online almost every single day questioning whether or not it's a sport, whether or not it matters, and whether or not it should exist at all? Well, I can think of 5 different reasons why nobody cares about cheerleading, and I plan to go through them in this video. The reasons being accessibility issues, scoring inconsistencies, gendered bias, negative media attention, and distinction issues. If you've immersed yourself in the sport of cheerleading, I ask that you hear me out. I'm not going to invalidate anything about the hard work that it takes to be a part of the sport. And if you know absolutely nothing about cheerleading, I implore you to sit and learn about it for a few minutes. Without further ado, here is why nobody cares about cheerleading. One of, if not the biggest reason for cheerleading's lack of popularity is how inaccessible it is. People don't know what it is and aren't interested in learning about what it's become because it's almost impossible. Most people envision short skirts and pom-poms on the side of a football field when they hear the word cheerleading. And although this is a regressive, backward-looking, and at times misogynistic way of thinking, I almost want to say that I can't really blame these people for thinking this way. When people think about football, they think about the NFL. They know they support, for example, the Commanders because they're from DC, or because it was their childhood favorite growing up, etc. When people think about basketball, they think about the NBA. They know their favorite teams, grew up loving their favorite players like Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan, LeBron James, etc. And while these sports are more popular, it can't entirely be blamed on the fact that they're male-dominated sports. While yes, not nearly as many people tune into the WNBA, for example, gymnastics is a popularized female-dominated sport that people are extremely familiar with. When people think about gymnastics, they think about USA Gymnastics and gymnasts like Simone Biles, Gabby Douglas, or Carrie Strug. There are these big organizations working to make these players and their sport as big as possible. Now, when people think about cheerleading, they think about their high school's cheerleading team. And that's where the problem comes in. I don't know where you guys went to high school or how good your high school's football team was, but mine was pretty bad. We lost almost every single game, so if I thought about my high school's football team every time someone mentioned football, I probably wouldn't take it very seriously. Even if you had a good football team in high school, how many of those players went pro? So, since there isn't an NFL or NBA or USA Gymnastics of cheerleading in people's minds, they think of the mostly amateur, beginner-level cheerleaders they watched on the sidelines. In reality, in what's called all-star cheerleading, there are many high-level cheerleading teams across the country that compete with high-level skills against teams across the world. There's kids throwing 100-pound girls that spin while in the air. There's kids flipping and twisting in ways that most don't even think is possible. But it is. You just don't see it. Watching elite-level cheerleading is largely behind a paywall. Varsity TV/Flow Cheer, for example, where you can watch live cheerleading events, is extremely expensive. Nothing is televised, and cheerleading is not fully an Olympic sport. And the NCAA doesn't sanction cheerleading as a sport either. The ICU has been recognized by the Olympic Committee, but it is not in the Olympics. I could go into the Biediger versus Quinnipiac University case, where cheerleading was established as a non-legitimate intercollegiate varsity sport, but I would be here for a very long time. So, to put it simply, because nobody sees it and so much is left unestablished, people don't take it seriously. And that's kind of where I want to transition to my second point, which is scoring inconsistencies. In my opinion, part of the reason why people don't care about cheerleading is because it is extremely inconsistent and very confusing when it comes to scoring. It's really hard to care about something that doesn't add up a lot of the time. To bring up football again, it's pretty easy to follow. You move the ball 10 yards forward within 4 attempts, and that's a first down, easy to understand. You get the ball to the end of the field, touchdown, easy to understand. Gymnastics works differently, but it's also pretty easy to understand. Simone Biles does an extremely difficult vault, one that almost no other female has even attempted, let alone competed. Given that the vault was extremely difficult, she had some technical errors like the big jump at the end. Now, take this vault by Luisa Blanco. She does an easier vault, and while she does have some technical errors like separated feet, it is a lot better technically than Simone Biles' vault, some could say. Obviously, Simone Biles still scored higher. It doesn't matter that Blanco's vault looked easier, that's because it was. Since Biles' vault was significantly more difficult, she got the higher score. Now, in cheerleading, you can pretty much just ignore all of the logic I just talked about. In cheer, there are 2 score sheets, the varsity or united score sheet and the world score sheet. Teams compete with the varsity score sheet for the majority of the season. Almost all competitions in the US, like cheersport, NCAA, UCA, etc., use the varsity score sheet. The world score sheet, on the other hand, is obviously used at the World Championships at the end of the season and a very few other competitions. The varsity score sheet values maxing out categories while the world score sheet is comparative. This won't make any sense to any non-cheerleaders, so let me explain. In a cheerleading routine, there are a few main sections for you to be scored in. Elite stunts, pyramid stunts, standing tumbling, running tumbling, jumps, basket tosses, and dance. On the varsity score sheet, you have to max out elite skills. To max out the elite stunt category, for example, the majority of stunt groups need to perform 4 elite level skills. The rest of your score comes from technique and other drivers. The world score sheet, on the other hand, is comparative and in my opinion makes more sense. The world score sheet is more or less similar to the gymnastics logic I talked about before. Maxing out doesn't matter and difficulty becomes a lot more important. To illustrate this, I'm going to be talking about a real-life example from the 2025 cheerleading season. Take these 2 teams, Cheer Extreme XSS and the California All-Stars Lady Bullets, for example. Both teams competed at NCAA on the varsity score sheet and Worlds on the world score sheet. At NCAA, XSS beat the Lady Bullets and won. This was confusing to a lot of people because, as I'll show in just a second, XSS's routine is objectively easier than that of Lady Bullets. But then, a couple weeks later at Worlds, on the world score sheet, Lady Bullets, although coming in second place to Ice Golden Girls, beat XSS by a staggering 8.6 points, 9.6 points raw. While there were some routine changes between the competitions, there weren't any that were extremely significant, so how did XSS beat Lady Bullets at NCAA and then lose to them by more than 8 points at Worlds? Because the score sheets, like I said, don't make sense. Let me show you. Like I said before, to get full elite stunt points on the varsity score sheet, the majority of the stunt groups need to perform 4 elite level skills. Here's Lady Bullets' stunt at NCAA. They do a quarter turn prep hand in hand to arabesque, a rewind, a 1 3/4 to stretch, and a high to high. Now, here's the team that beat them, XSS. In the first stunt, they do a kick double and a high to high. About 50 seconds later, after doing baskets, tumbling, and a few motions, they do another stunt, which is a full up switch up to arabesque and a full twisting tick-tock. Both Lady Bullets and XSS did 4 elite level skills, and even though Lady Bullets competed harder skills and did them fluidly, both teams got the same difficulty score. And what makes it even more confusing is that while yes, they still did get the same difficulty score, Lady Bullets having a more difficult stunt actually hurt their score and likely caused them to lose. Because they both checked off these boxes, what's left to score for this section is technique. Lady Bullets had more technical errors than XSS, but obviously when you compete harder skills, they're harder to execute in a clean manner. Doing a rewind, which is basically a backflip that lands on top of people for my non-cheer friends, and a 1 3/4 turn, again on top of people, is objectively more difficult than a twisting dismount and switch-ups. Now, of course, I'm not saying that XSS cheated or that they didn't deserve to win or that they suck, because none of that is true. They won fair and square according to the score sheet, but how fair and square is it a few weeks later when that winning routine is a 4th place routine that is 8.6 points behind 2nd place? It doesn't make sense to switch the score sheets like that, let alone having one that literally doesn't value difficulty. And it brings me back to my original point, why people don't care about cheerleading. It's not fair. Like, why set up athletes to compete on one nonsensical score sheet that doesn't value difficulty for an entire season, and then at the final competition, the World Championships, you say, well, now, even though you didn't need to value it all season, difficulty matters. In that case, it makes everything hard to predict and hard to follow. Nobody wants to watch something unpredictable and unfair. And of course, elite stunts aren't the only thing to be judged on, if that's your concern. I also looked at Lady Bullets and XSS's tumbling, in which you need the majority of the team to perform level-appropriate passes, and yeah, the same logic applies. I won't spend too much time on my next topic, mostly because I actually already have a video talking about it. But I did want to highlight gender bias as part of the reason why people don't care about cheer. Cheerleading became female-dominated sometime during World War II, mostly because men went off to war. So, as you can imagine, as cheerleading feminized, perception of it changed in the public eye. Because it was women, it wasn't leading the crowd, it was more so pleasing the crowd. And like I said in my video, this is a pattern across many different industries. Professions like teaching, nursing, and even computer programming were once male-dominated and respected, but once they became female-coded, society devalued them, and cheerleading is no different. And it's also important to note that cheerleading has evolved immensely over the years. Yes, it was strictly pom-poms and pleated skirts, and that's simply not what it's restricted to now. As you've seen in the clips I've shown thus far, it's difficult, it's flashy, it's fun, but it's female, and that's part of the reason why no one cares. Male cheerleaders do exist, and they're awesome, but the sport is female-dominated. Cheerleading's female identity keeps it in the limbo. It's competitive enough to be athletic, but too female-coded to be legitimized. Like I said before, the NBA is leaps and bounds ahead of the WNBA, just as the NFL is light years ahead of the WFA. Of course, there are very few outliers like gymnastics, and even then, gymnastics is only heavily followed during Olympic season, once every 4 years, for 10 days. So I'll leave it there. I believe that cheerleading being female-dominated is absolutely part of the reason why nobody cares about it. And here's where we get controversial. When cheerleading goes mainstream, oftentimes it's for a bad reason, or it becomes something bad. I'll explain. Cheer doesn't go mainstream often at all, because again, nobody really cares about it, but let's look at some of the times that it did, or kind of did. Starting with most recently, Cheer Extreme's All-Star Cheerleading Showcase was mentioned in major news outlets like USA Today, Daily Mail, and TMZ in November of 2025. This is extremely uncommon, so you may ask, what caused cheerleading to be such a huge topic of conversation in the media? Well, it's because Bill Belichick, football coach and former general manager of the New England Patriots, was in attendance. I don't know anything about football, but my dad says that most people say he's the greatest coach ever, so do with that what you will. Anyways, wow, big name athletic celebrity at a cheerleading event. This must be huge news. Well, it was huge news, but mostly because of who he was there for. His girlfriend, 24-year-old Jordan Hudson, is on Cheer Extreme's open, or adult, non-tumbling team this year, Code Black. Code Black is a 3-time world champion team, and they're pretty good. Now, when you consider the fact that Bill Belichick is 73 years old, it quickly becomes apparent why this was so widely reported on. Yeah. But never mind a big age gap, what about that Cheer Netflix show that everyone was talking about during COVID? Yeah, of course that was huge for cheerleading. While it slightly touched on All-Star, it made collegiate cheerleading so much more visible and known to the general public. It highlighted stars on Navarro's cheer team at the time, like Coach Monica Aldama and athletes Gabby Butler, Jerry Harris, and Ladarius Marshall, and of course more. I mean, these people were on Ellen and interacting with celebrities. This show 100% made cheerleading more mainstream and understood. but that positive media attention would turn negative pretty quickly. Jerry Harris, who was an extremely well-liked member of the Navarro cheer team, known for his positive energy and what he referred to as Matt Talk, was charged with production of child pornography and other child-related sex crimes by the FBI. He was sentenced to 12 years in prison, and the story of his arrest quickly made headlines. It wasn't just Harris's arrest that made waves, as coach Monica Aldama came under fire soon thereafter. In 2023, Maddie Lane filed a lawsuit saying that she was sexually assaulted by a teammate while she was on the Navarro team. Lane alleged that the incident was reported to Aldama, but Aldama told her not to make it a big deal and to keep quiet. This obviously wasn't a good look for Aldama or cheer in general. In 2022, a photo of Gabby Butler in blackface surfaced on X. The photo was taken in 2018, and according to Butler, painting oneself with black paint was a part of the cheer team's initiation ritual at the time. Ladarius Marshall hasn't necessarily had a huge mainstream controversy, but in December of 2025, very recently, he has publicly supported Nicki Minaj's appearance at America Fest with Erica Kirk, agreeing with her anti-transgender rhetoric. This isn't really mainstream per se, but I figured I'd mention it considering the topic at hand. Also, just a side note, Ladarius has been extremely supportive of transgender athletes in the past, so this is why it's so confusing for people. Now, please note that this isn't even all of Navarro's negative media attention, let alone cheerleading's as a whole. But it is very telling that all mainstream media attention related to cheerleading is typically negative, and that's a big part of the reason why I believe people don't give it the time of day. If all the general public can say about cheerleading is that there's an athlete dating a 73-year-old, an athlete serving 12 years in jail, and a coach that covered up sexual assault, then why should they give it an ounce of their attention? Lastly, I want to talk about something that I touched on a bit at the beginning of the video. The impossibility of differentiating subsections of cheerleading. Sideline versus all-star, most notably, and then wherever collegiate comes in. Most people only think of sideline cheerleading like the cheerleaders on the side of a football field, as I mentioned earlier. Most people think these cheerleaders only appear at football games, but many high school cheer teams compete as well. Someone might say, okay, well yeah, they compete sometimes. They're still mostly on the sidelines and easy to spot. Okay, then what about this team? Or this team. They're both high school cheerleading teams. They don't look like it because they're advanced, and also this competition, High School Nationals, looks exactly like some of the other all-star competitions you've seen. Oh, and these are all-star cheerleading teams. They all look similar, right? This one is an open team, or a team made up of only adults. And then there's college teams. Here's the University of Kentucky's cheer team, and then here's the Navarro College's cheer team. You might be thinking the Kentucky cheer team's uniform looks like a sideline cheer uniform, but the Navarro College's uniform looks like an all-star uniform. What's the difference? Why are there open teams if there are college teams, and why are high school teams at competitions? Someone who does cheerleading could answer all of these questions with ease, but someone who has no idea what the differences are gets too confused. Cheerleading is extremely convoluted, which is why no one cares. I'm going to wrap this up by saying that I don't mean to invalidate cheerleaders who have poured their heart and soul into the sport. Cheerleading is my favorite sport, but I can also recognize the issues that exist within it. In hindsight, I suppose it doesn't really matter that people don't care about cheerleading. But in a way, people not caring is exactly why so many people don't think it's a sport to begin with. It's too confusing to follow and isn't in the Olympics or a part of a widely recognized federation, so who cares? Simone Biles wearing an Olympic gold medal and Nathan McKinnon holding the Stanley Cup are recognized achievements that matter to people. Sally Sue wearing her gold medal from the cheerleading worlds after competing with her limited extra small team from Utah doesn't really matter. Sorry. All in all, cheerleading needs to change drastically if anyone is to care about it, and that's pretty much all I have left to say. I'm looking forward to reading comments and listening to what you guys have to say. And once again, thank you so much for watching. Happy holidays, Happy New Year, depending on when you're watching this. But yeah, thank you so much.